That really got people connected into wanting to see, of course, more of the dinosaurs. We had special dinosaur exhibits because, of course, we are known for dinosaurs, and getting them to buy into those experiences as well. At the aquarium, we have a virtual reality pod again. We just got a new screening for sharks, which is really cool, and we got it to display, not only the proper information, but more accurate information as to the type of sharks that we have at Shed Aquarium, because we want to connect the story of our animals to what a guest is saying and getting them excited to go see that. So that's a lot of the times of what, if we're bringing in a virtual reality, we want it to connect to what we're doing. It needs to absolutely to connect and be educational, one, but also, helping us with our greater mission into telling that story and being an absolute upsell that they could buy into. Because if it's a smaller exhibition you're connecting it to, it might not get a lot of attraction, and that's a lot more work for your marketing teams and your visitor experience teams to sell on. But if it's a bigger thing that you can sell it to, like sharks or like Suda T-Rex, then it could really be an easier sell, and again, increasing the visitor experience, because we could add those on to the experience, and it gets people to see our content in a new way besides just standing there looking at it. They actually get to interact with it, and it's in a whole new way. So that's where we're at right now. More commonly, Museum of Science and Industry also has virtual reality, and I'm not sure if any others within our immediate area have any other, because we have an art museum and the Adler Planetarium, but it's still new technology coming within the past 2 years, 2 to 3 years, that we have virtual reality coming into the world of museums and stuff. But yeah.
Thank you very much. I muted the room. Rebella, can you hear me? I can hear you now.
Yes, we
Excellent.
can.
Thank you, Michael. Up next, we have Wilson, and I'm going to change my view here just a moment so that we can get a little picture-in-picture and you guys can actually see Wilson. I believe he's going to turn his camera on, which will be new for us. I'm going to go to his first slide and let him introduce himself. Or actually, Caroline, if you don't mind, you want to give the introduction?
Sure. So, I do have an echo for some reason on your end of it. Okay. Yeah, so I want to let Wilson introduce himself, but I think that this is going to be super exciting. And what we'd like to do is have Wilson share his camera. And he's, I believe, standing in just the right spot so everybody can see the Verbella side of it. But I'm going to let you go ahead and introduce yourself, Wilson Tang, and just the kind of connection and fabric that we do to connect up these industries together. So I'm so happy. Welcome to Wilson. Thanks so much.
Can you guys hear me and see me okay?
Yes, I can hear you on the Verbella side. How about your side, Matt?
We can hear you and see you on this side.
Okay. Well, thank you, everybody, for having me here. And glad to hear that Chicago is exactly the same temperature and grayness as Vancouver, Canada. So I will just jump right into the slideshow because I don't think we have too much time. Can we start the slideshow if we can?
Wilson, if you want to take your screen zoom on to the most.
Is that okay?
Yeah, we're on the second slide right now, the bio and team.
Okay, all right. So, myself and the team, we come from a pretty varied background, both from console gaming to visual effects and film, and as well as mobile game. And then myself, I also have a background in architecture. So, like many of you folks there, the whole wave of VR and excitement around VR and AR started about 5 or 6 years ago. And for us and our team, we really feel like we've been waiting for this convergence of technologies for the entirety of our lives in some ways. We also have some folks from museum design, and I think early on we identified the fact that museums is one area that VR and AR can really add value. And we started growing during COVID, so that really made a lot of sense. So next slide. Okay. As you guys know, HoloLens, AR and VR have been two separate technologies for the last 5 or 6 years. HoloLens, when it came out, was a $3,000 device. That was 2 years ago. As of today, the Quest 2, what I would consider a kind of convergence device because it can do both AR and VR on the same device, is now $300 US. That's today. And we don't know what Apple's going to do, but we think it's going to be pretty expensive, and we think it's going to be next year or the year after. And if you look on the bottom there, of course, there's been quite a bit of consumer interest in AR and VR. In education as well as museum, and as you know, those areas really blur. Now, the one thing to keep in mind is that much of the discussion around VR and AR has always been around the hardware and the FOV and the resolution. I think for us, we identified a couple of key things that is absolutely necessary to what we believe to be immersive social experience. So first of all, of course, is the networking behind it. Hence, a team like ourselves, coming from a AAA background, network gaming and network presence is absolutely part of our wheelhouse. And then second of all, hand tracking. So if you look at the image in the middle there, the ability to do hand tracking without any external sensors at all is really a game changer. And the way we think about it is that we've spent about 50 years teaching the world that we interact with digital media, digital experiences, all on the 2D screen with nothing but a mouse and a keyboard. We've done that for 50 years. And so imagine what we can do for the next 50 years when we can use our hands, these instruments that nature gave us. That's really been a primary, I would say, focus for us. Next slide. As everybody here knows, education, quality of education is really important, and the quality of teacher is very important. Now, I think part of our mission is how can we bring the level of active learning that we see in the best museums in the world, museums like what we just heard about from the previous speaker, to science centers, who we've done quite a few projects with. What would the world be if we can bring that level of active learning to any school, anywhere, anytime? And that's been our driving mission. Slide. Sure, at this point, do you mind playing the video? So the video will show you a little bit of a snapshot of where we were a couple of years ago. And oh, wrong video. There you go.
Are you guys hearing audio in Verbella?
No,
No, we're not.
it's
Okay,
okay. It's just music.
Okay, I'm seeing there's supposed to be audio, but I don't hear it here either.
Well, Wilson, feel free.
Pardon me?
I'm guessing she was saying if you want to narrate over it.
Oh, it would have been jaunty video, so I could have hummed something, but I don't want to. I don't think. All right.
Welcome to home.
Okay, so what is the problem and what's the opportunity? Well, number one, 2D content is not engaging to an entire new generation of students who grew up with video games. Running an experiential museum is really expensive. Exhibits takes years to develop and then build and to maintain. Zoom fatigue, tired of talking heads. We're kind of doing that here, and hopefully we'll get beyond that in the future. Kids and parents don't want to download separate VR apps for new activities, and that's part of why we built the platform the way we did. And then lastly, museums and schools need a strategy for a hybrid online-offline strategy for post-COVID world. I think the immersive opportunities. It's not going to go away. I think COVID really opened doors, if you will. But the real museum, the real schools, they're also very, very important. So how do we as as an industry, and how do we as a platform, as a team, design experiences that kind of marry the two sides, just like you folks are doing there now. Slide. Okay, so to that end, we've built one platform, and this platform supports both mobile AR as well as immersive VR. And like I said, we treat them exactly the same. Our content can be delivered to both apps simultaneously without a lot of overhead. Now, of course, there's about 3 billion mobile phones, so that's hard to ignore. But the numbers for VR headsets like Quest is getting interesting. I think we're in the 15 to 20 million dollar headset, 15 20 million headsets out there in the world. So that's starting to be fairly interesting. It's equivalent to, I would say, the early days of PlayStation. And the platform, it might be worthwhile mentioning that the platform is not open to the public. That's not the kind of platform it is. It's a platform that we built primarily for us, do kind of bespoke experiences for our clients as quickly as possible. We are going to keep on evolving the platform, and but our intention is not to open it to the public. Hi. Oh, there you go. All right. So I think besides just focusing on the technology, I think the design aspects of immersive is really, really important, and the team that we've assembled is kind of perfect mix of kind of skill sets. And if you look around, the best examples of immersive media, what do you need to do? You need to do a combination of these 4 design disciplines, right? The UI UX designer, make sure that everything is clear and concise, and nobody will get lost in the experience. The industrial designer or architect is, at the end of the day, this is a spatial medium, and those kind of things, that level of thinking, that spatial 3D thinking is really, really important, or else it might as well be on a 2D screen. Game designer, how do we make it fun? How do we keep people kind of in that experience, whether it's a museum or a piece of art, to give it a level of engagement and compulsion that the best games do very well. And lastly, mobile developer, because this generation of devices, and I think for the foreseeable future, whether it's a HoloLens or Magic Leap or the Quest, is essentially the same class of device as a mobile phone. So optimization and performance is really, really key. So for other teams out there who are interested in pursuing this industry in this world, I think I think it's a good idea to have either a combination of these skill sets on your team, or like we did, which is kind of find different designers and then kind of expose them to the intersection of these 4 different disciplines. Currently, there are no schools out there that churns out designers at this intersection. So in some ways, part of our strategy over the last 3 or 4 years has been grooming our own internal talent. Slide. I won't go into too much detail, but this slide is just meant to say that in the experiences that we've been developing, we take research very seriously. So when we put on our other hat, not the platform hat, but our design agency hat, we really kind of operate like any museum design firm. So we start with research. In this case, we were talking to JPL engineers about the real science behind the Raptor engine. We did a little exhibit for the Science Center where you get to kind of light up the Raptor engine. And it turns out scientifically, or in terms of physics, lighting a rocket engine is no different than lighting a firecracker. So that insight came from discussion with the JPL engineer. On the left side is wireframing, and that's a very typical tool for game development. And in this case, it's fairly linear. And so because we knew that even whether it's mobile, AR, or VR, you don't really want to keep people in there for too long. So we want to kind of put them to a really concisely designed, very clear step-by-step experience that's we're targeting about 10 minutes long at most. And wireframing is just one of the tools that game designers use. Slide. This is the Raptor engine experience, and it is on the app. If you guys want to download the Yumago app, it's on the App Store, and there should be something called Ontario Science Center. And if you hit that, there'll be 5 experiences there. That one of which is this one right here. So I think partially, not too many people talk about what's possible in mobile AR and VR, but we like to think that we squeeze every ounce of GPU on these devices, and I think we're proud of the fact that the visual quality and fidelity that we can achieve, I think sets our team apart as well. So you look at this. This is not a pre-rendered image. This is a screen capture of the actual exhibit, and fidelity, the shading, the lighting, all that stuff is exactly what you see here. So it is possible, and I think besides the technology, the presentation, the art style, the realism of it, all that stuff is important to immerse the user into experience. So next slide. Okay, so early on we did a project for a small museum here in Vancouver, and that's how we. This was during COVID, and I think it's an ideal use of our platform, our team, and our technology. It was a very small experience museum. I think it was about 20,000 square feet. So the idea was that we would put virtual portals throughout the experience, throughout the museum, and those portals we can easily update over the years. So it's a good example of that kind of hybrid approach between the real experience and the AR experience. Right from the beginning, we were involved in planning the experience so that where the portals are perfectly posed and placed to be where they are relative to the doorway or physical exhibits. And because we got involved so early, we're able to kind of work very closely with the architects of the space as well as the museum designers to make sure that the virtual and the real kind of work together seamlessly. And because the experience is so small, the museum is so small, the plan here is to utilize a platform that we can update the experience on a regular basis, probably once a year, drive return visitors. So I think that's one of the problems, one of the pain points for museums, if you will, is that how do you drive repeat visitors? Because the majority of visitors are from the local city or the city where situated. Of course, there's always tourists from the outside, but how do you get the local schools to come back over and over again? So our approach is to do the rapid deployment of the dynamic content, do that every 6 months, every year, and then the physical to work that would be complementary to the physical build out. So this is a good example of that kind of hybrid approach. Okay, last slide. Okay, last slide. Just the engagement metrics slide. I can just talk over it if it's.
It's live in the room here. It's getting there.
Okay. So the only thing I would say is that it's not like we are taking any personal data. We do collect, working with the stakeholder and the client. We can build into the experience itself pretty granular data on what the user is looking at, how long they're looking at it. Are they getting stuck on something, or did they get lost? They not look at something that they're missing out on. That's really important for educators and curators as well, because as you can imagine, the typical process for a museum design, you would prototype something, design something. It might take 6 months to a year. You build it, and that's it. You're stuck with it. Whereas for us, we built a platform precisely because we can roll something out really quickly. We can use metrics like this in concert with the curators and museum designers, and we can know if the design's working. Are they looking at the right
Hey,
information?
Wilson.
Yep.
I'm sorry. We just we disconnected from Verbella, from our live stream camera. Would you mind pausing for just a moment?
Oh yeah, yeah.
Sorry about that. Matt is in the process of getting the other setup back up and running.
You know, I'm pretty much. I think I'm probably close to my allotted time, anyways.
Okay. Well, yeah. When
So
he gets back
Wilson,
in, go ahead.
yeah, I was
Go
going to
ahead.
say,
Yeah.
where things might.
I'm gonna turn off my webcam. Is that okay?
Work. Go ahead.
Totally.
Can you still hear me?
Yep. Loud and clear. Matt
Yeah,
has just gotten back into Matt has gotten back into Verbella. He is coming over here now to
Okay.
the conference hall. Sorry again.
No, it's okay. I'm finished my presentation. So thanks everybody for having me giving me a chance to talk.
Yeah, and Wilson, this might be a good chance.
So can you repeat that?
Oh, I was just going to say that since that we
Yeah.
can.
Caroline, your mic keeps cutting out.
Yeah, it's cutting out for me too.
Okay. Says
Second,
that,
Caroline, I tweaked it for you.
did you? Okay. How about now? Is it good now?
Yep.
Okay. I was just saying on our side of it, Tom and Wilson, that it I think that the Q&A, we can pick up any gaps that there might be on the in-person side, because I do think, Wilson, that some of the points you made about your design process and about how you capture metrics and just might be interesting for that audience. So I know I have a couple of things that I wanted to ask, which I'll do at the Q&A. And thank you, Wilson.
Thank you.
I think we're all good for hitting it back to you, Matt.
He's working on tech issues. 1 sec.
Sure, no problem. No problem.
You guys should be able to hear me now, yes?
Yes, loud and clear.
So I was just going to say, sorry about that. We actually have not had that problem, to my knowledge, ever. But with that, we're going to go to our next set of slides and our next presenter. Thank you, Wilson. Sorry about the technical difficulty. Luckily, it only hit the end there. And actually, really quickly, I'm just going to say 2 things about Michael Finney first, since he is not here. He has this an augmented reality application called Chicago 1893, which actually a lot of the museum campus that had been spoken about by Michael earlier came around and was developed during the 1893 World's Fair. There was a lot more to it than what is still in existence, and Michael Finney, who's not here, has created an AR app that allows you to kind of go around places in the city and see what was there during the time. And they are full-scale 3D models, to my knowledge, life-size. If you search his app, I believe it's called Chicago 1893, you should be able to find it out, but that's all the detail I have. We'll try to have some more information on the website afterwards. But let's get to our next in-person presenter who is here, who is John. Hi, John.
Hello, everyone. Hello, everyone. I'm John Tweedy, and I'm with the Illinois Holocaust Museum. I'm the previously exhibit manager, now director of exhibit design. It's a new title, so it's hard for me to actually remember that. It's a very new title. There it is, actually, right? So I've been at the museum for going on 12 years now. The building was opened in 2009, and it has about 9,000 square, a little over 9,000 square feet of sort of an immersive permanent exhibit. We have a temporary space and two other sort of what I'm sure I'm being, asked to be up here for, immersive kind of experiences. One of which is it's called a DIT experience, which is Dimensions and Testimony. And it's a holographic display that you can actually interact with. So you can actually ask questions of a Holocaust survivor. And the other is a VR. We have a permanent VR space now that has two VR experiences in it. So we can go to the first slide. And I know we're probably running on time here, so I can be very quick, and you can ask me any questions post if I skim over things quickly. So this is what you would see if you were actually at the museum and you were in our holographic theater. It's a survivor stories theater is what we call it. The survivor happens to be Fritzi Frischel, and Fritzi was one of the leaders of the museum. He recently passed away within COVID, and she was such a proponent of technology, bringing technology into the building and using it to tell stories. Because of course, as Michael kind of touched on, like museums really, especially history museums, it's all about stories, right? It's all about storytelling. It's about getting everybody engaged in whatever that story is. So here, there's an sort of a introductory film, gives her a little history on what the survivor story is, and then you're actually allowed to ask the question to the survivor, and they will answer you. There are about 13 people in this interactive, and they change it around about every 2 to 3 weeks. Fritzi, before she passed away, this opened, by the way, in about 2017. It's actually about summer of 2017 is when this space opened, and it's the Take a Stand Center. It's part of component of that center. So that all opened in 2017. After this opened, she immediately was on the bandwagon of what about like the sites of atrocity? So here we are. They can tell their story. You can ask them questions. They can actually answer, what happened to them, what do they know about their mom and dad, what, their life after, all this stuff about the Holocaust. But she was concerned that the sites of atrocity would not be connected as well and remembered as well, because the motto of the museum is remember the past, transform the future. So VR was becoming kind of this, we'd partner with the Shoah Foundation out of LA to do this. Shoah Foundation had started actually bringing a VR component into sort of a test mode, and we realized that that was actually one of the kind of most impactful ways to really bring about being in Auschwitz if you don't go to Auschwitz, right? Because has anybody here been to Auschwitz? Which is it's amazing, but it's yeah, amazing, and but it's it's not an experience that everybody's going to be able to have. And you think about what's going on in Ukraine, you think about all these places, like, I don't know, will they still be around for how many more years? So Fritzi and George, and a guy named George Brent, they both went back to Auschwitz. So our VR space is called A Journey Back. You can go to the next slide. We sent crews to Auschwitz. They spent weeks there filming. And of course, it's obviously sort of tricky to keep them all in the same place. So obviously, measurements go on. But they took a lot of drone footage, time-lapse footage. Fritzi's, in the barracks telling the story about what went on there, the latrines. And there are also these memory spaces, which are like constructed spaces, right? Things that they can't actually find reference for, so they create the spaces based on facts and her memories and things. So there is a little video that kind of just pages through somewhat of what you would see within this experience. Check that out.
I don't think audio is working, so if you want to talk over it.
It's okay. I think it's actually just like Wilson's, it's music, primarily.
Any commentary that would be really great.
Got it. So that's Fritzy's farm. That's where she grew up. You do end up in a train car. This is one of the the memory spaces. The drone footage was primarily so you could get a scale of what these spaces, these places really are. She tells a lot of the story. Part of her survival is about her aunt, and that's a representative of her aunt. And I could get into why it's called A Promise Kept, but I would actually invite you all to actually go to the museum to see why it's actually a promise kept. So we go on to the next slide. An interesting thing about this VR experience is that while there's drone footage and memory space and all of that, it's also based on a one-on-one actual space. So when you actually enter the space, see something similar to these frames. You do not see images in the frames. I think you can go to the next slide. So Fritzy telling stories about barracks, how they talked about recipes that they would, dream about to sort of like stave off hunger. Next slide. This is George Brent, the other survivor that's currently there. So they're on the landing. That's on the landing ramp of Auschwitz. This is one of the illustrations that's in the memory space. You can keep going. This is another memory space. This is a story of George Brent's about one of the places that he was in a labor camp at, called Ebensee. There are lots of historical overlays. So this is the landing ramp. That's obviously a historical image kind of deposited into the landing ramp. Next. Aerial. This is only one camp of Auschwitz, as some of you know. These films actually were well received in many of the film festivals. And this is what the space looks like when you arrive. So it's nope, that's fine. You could keep it here too. So you see all the picture frames. So when you put on the headset, you are actually in a platform. You're actually in a created space, and then all those frames become populated. They become part of the interactive experience. There are 8 chairs right now. I'm not sure that we're looking to expand to that too much at this point. You can go to the next slide. So there are 3 more experiences in development. This is Doris, who Doris is primarily, sorry, I just saw her film, but I think she was primarily based out of France. And then the next slide is Miriam. She is also based out of France. And then the next slide, which is the last slide, is Rhodey. So the 3 of them are going to be our next VR subjects. They're coming along fairly quickly. They have a similar construct. They have memory spaces. They have real footage. It's all 360. They're very powerful stories. It's a very powerful medium to tell stories in. One of the challenges to telling these stories is finding a way to tell the stories and have the technology not become a factor, right? So it's like trying to create, a seamless storyline where you're not fighting with technology in any way. So I think that's all I really have at this point. Probably go to Q&A, I guess.
So I need to unmute myself. We're going to go to Q&A. I need to give the people here microphones. If you guys want to talk on the microphones, we're going to make sure everybody in the room can hear you.
Does mine work?
Hello. Virtual world. Hello.
So Wilson, can you talk for a second?
Yes, we
Yep.
could hear that. Sorry about that.
Yep,
Was that you,
talking
Tom?
now.
Yes. Wilson.
Okay, so
Yep.
where this? All right, and Michael
Test. Yep.
Yes.
Cool.
and John.
I'm here. Are you here? Are we all here? We're here.
Okay, so where this is going to get fun right now is a lot of an echoey view here. So again, here's who everybody is. The people in the virtual space can see us on their center screen. We can see the people in the virtual space. The way this will work, and I need to get a question and answer for the audience here. So I will, again, if you have a question you would like to ask in the audience, it's very simple. Just raise your hand. Ben will come over. He'll hand you the microphone, ask your question. We'll give the microphone back to Ben. Whoever, if you can direct a question at any one person, you can ask a question of the whole group. It's entirely up to you. For those in Verbella, what's going to happen, Caroline will watch for people raising their hand in Verbella. And if I see Caroline's hand go up, I know there's a question in Verbella, and that way she'll throw that. So who wants to go first? This is always the fun part. You don't have to worry about it. Yeah, we won't hear that in here, but they'll hear it in there. So they're hearing you bang on the microphone.
Yeah, I wasn't sure. So.
Who's going first? Everyone's always afraid to be the first question. Oh, go ahead. Right up front here.
So for anyone who wants to share, what is the process from deciding maybe what, like, are you applying for funding, and then what is the kind of the pitch or ask for funding? How defined is it before you develop the experience? You know kind of what you want to develop, and then you apply for funding, and like how does that work in terms of, I'm assuming you need funding, right? That's my assumption. And then the process, like who do you partner
There's
with?
definitely
and
money
develop-
involved. Yes,
Yeah.
we have to. Yeah.
Who wants to go first?
I mean, I don't know if maybe being a little more involved in it. We there's obviously the germ, the seed, right? We want to do this thing. Funding is clearly an issue. My museum happens to be one where there's a ton of empathy for, in the community and in the world, and it's also a very time sensitive kind of place, right? So survivors are very old right now, and so there's a huge push to, if there is going to be any storytelling by any of them, it has to be done now. So we have an incredible fundraising team, and they that becomes prioritized, right? So obviously the building needs to stay open and all that, but that becomes the priority. So yeah, the seed gets planted. It goes through a committee, and obviously all the board and everybody has to like kind of approve these things. But it is, because it's such a time-based thing, there's been a lot of push to get that, at least footage, at least all the things that you need to have right away. But yes, so it's not been terribly hard. They also embrace the technology a lot, so it's not too hard on that front either.
And Wilson, doesn't say, go for it.
I was just going to share some insight. For us, this, because we're not the museum. Museums are our clients. So for us, the interesting insight is that we have to upfront decide if we want to engage with the marketing arm of a institution or the education arm, and they both have deeper or shallower pockets depending on where they are in the timeline of their exhibit rollout. I would say because if you just think about it, when we do stuff for mobile AR, for example, that reach is actually at home. So it kind of fights against the fundamental business model of most museums, which is tickets at the door. So that means suddenly we have to engage with the marketing team for that, funding source. That said, I think in the last couple of years, we've seen everybody realize that this is potentially very disruptive in not just technology sense, but in a business sense. So I think the cross chatter between marketing and education and the curatorial staff, all that stuff is just kind of blending together. So I think we're seeing lots of possibilities. Getting some funding from multiple sources.
And I can also add that funding, a lot of these projects, it's they're not overnight, right? Wilson can probably attest to that. I mean, they usually take 1, 2, 3, years. The interactive theater was a 3-year development from starting to shoot footage of the survivors answering all the questions to building the space and having it installed. So, there's also time, so you can kind of prioritize funding. So it hasn't been terribly difficult to kind of make all that happen with the right fundraising.
Well, John, you should work with us. We never do anything longer than 4 months.
So we'd be a dream client. Great.
Yes.
Matt, we have a question on this end on Rubella, if there's room.
Go for it.
Great. And I'm going to ask Trisha Giannakis to come up to the stage. Trisha, did you want to join me up here? Hopefully my mic is not sputtering here. I'm going to mute it. And if you want to walk up here, and then I'll mute and you can unmute and ask your question.
Here I come. Hi.
Hi. If you just want to turn around, because that way the rest of the audience can see you. Even though you're probably a little small for all of you guys there in person, but still, thank you, Trish.
I'm sorry, I don't know how to turn around.
Oh, just use your arrows on your keyboard. Just use the arrows to swivel around, just left or right, either way. There you go.
Thanks. It's
Excellent.
been a while.
No, that's okay.
So my question is, I love this the Holocaust Museum project. I've seen it. I've actually, I don't remember where I saw it, but I saw it actually when it first said you came up with it in 2018. I think that's when I first saw it, and I thought it was the most incredible project. I'm actually doing a project for the Bronx where I'm doing augmented reality, a map to find the rich history of the Bronx. And you mentioned that you're using drones, and I want to know how that works, because when I mentioned wanting to use drones to do any kind of volumetric scanning for the larger sculptures that I want to scan, like Abraham Lincoln's sculpture, who was sculpted by the Piccielli brothers from the Bronx, they said, oh no, you can't have drones. Well, I know that by the Capitol is not a good idea, but did you run into any problems with going in with drones to scan the locations, or going to some of the facilities? Like, was there any obstacles that you had to face?
They had to grant permissions, obviously, so there was a little bit of just getting a sign off on that. Obviously, the Capitol might be an issue, right? If you were to try and do that, but I think we found that the drone footage is amazing, and you can attach any of the cameras that you need to drones, and the footage that is in the newer ones are amazing too, and a lot of those were in because Doris's her story starts in France, but she ends up in China. She ends up in Shanghai. There's a ghetto, the ghetto in Shanghai, where a lot of Jews were able to get out of Europe, and they ended up kind of stuck there for a while. So within China, being as it is, they were able to get a drone and be able in these small little alleyways and things, get into the ghetto and really be able to show kind of amazing footage there. All over Europe, they traveled to France and through Germany and some other places. So it's all the footage from Auschwitz and things. That was just, I think the only stipulations were that they were not supposed to run drones while the park was open. So they actually had to do time lapse like super early in the morning. And so, there are restrictions, but they were able to do it. They were able to get it.
All right, Trisha, thank you. You can return to your seat. And I think we have a question in the space here. And oh, by the way, I know I didn't mention this when we started, but Tom is monitoring the live stream too, so we could possibly be getting questions from the live stream. And I thought I saw his hand go up, so we might have one there. But in the room, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. This is for the Holocaust Museum. Obviously, you have visitors. We've been to the Holocaust Museum, and so we saw the interactive exhibit, which was great. But do you actually have an app where people don't even have to go to the museum, and they can just do it through their Oculus headset? You don't have to physically be at the museum.
So are you talking about the interactive one or the VR?
Interactive or the second one where you visit the
Auschwitz
person in Poland.
Yeah, visiting with the person in Auschwitz. So this is it's a little bit of a down the line kind of a situation. We are actually currently in the process of actually working with VRAR to get a traveling set of headsets. I think that Fritzy's, and Fritzy's not on screen anymore, but Fritzy's ultimate, kind of focus was trying to get it to everybody. So it would be in-app. It would be something you could just download and go see it, just like you can the Anne Frank, which actually I think is on that headset over there. And it's, and that would be amazing. I mean, I think that they would love to do that. They just haven't figured out the logistics on that yet. But I think that is an ultimate goal, is to get it to be able to, you could see any of them. The immersive one is a little tougher, and that does travel to different venues as a monitor-based kind of thing. But it's that one I don't know how we would. that one's got a little bit more sort of back end. That's a little tougher to kind of make portable.
We should talk.
What's that?
We should talk.
Okay. There's also some licensing problems with that one, so that I can't really. Yeah. But.
Because that's the power.
You guys careful. I know when they can't hear you.
We have a question in the back of the room, question in the center of the room. Tom, you still got one?
Yeah, but it's a personal one. So when trying to get friends to try virtual reality, for example, if you don't have really a seamless experience educating someone how to step into VR, they might never come back. How have you all handled that from like that kind of consumer experience at a museum?
Yeah, so it's all about the your visitor experience staff itself, and having them being comfortable enough to demonstrate it themselves. So oftentimes you were either selling it right then and there, but a lot of people want to be like, oh, what is it? Like, can I exactly know? We might have a little promo video up there that will show what they'll see or what it actually is, or we'll just have the staff ourselves, and most of the time the staff do like trying out the virtual reality, so they'll get on the virtual reality themselves to actually gear in. And then a lot of times we have children too, so children are a lot more scared, or they're eager, they want to do it, but then once it actually happens they start getting scared. So all about creating the experience, being patient with all audiences, and making sure that we're with them step by step. So even if we have to I've done this a few times, pausing a ride, checking on them, seeing if they want to continue. If they want to continue, let's go for it. And then, if we want to try it again after a few bumps, we're going to try it again after a few bumps, just so they could really get that experience in there.
And just from our side, it's everybody's a little nervous about it because the drone footage, for anyone who's got sort of height issues or kind of, I mean, it can be something, like you just feel like you're floating and all of a sudden you're freaking out. So it's seated, which is why you saw the seats in the space. But there is also an introductory video that really lays out a lot of that. We try to just give everybody as much information as they can. They can always raise their hand or just take it off the headset. So that's always, out there as a consideration.
Anything to add, Wilson?
I was just going to add that hardware has come a long way. So I think 4 years ago it was just so clumsy and messy, and a lot of friends and guests that tried it was really immediately turned off. I think with the newer devices, especially Quest, so lightweight, and I think they've done a lot with the UX of entering experience as well. I think it's I'm finding the uptake to be a lot easier.
I don't know if you have any more in the virtual space or on live. I think we have it in the center of the room still. Yep.
We will have some comments, I think, but go ahead.
Okay.
Hi. I started a virtual museum called Hong Kong XR Museum a year ago, and it's very similar to the Holocaust Museum to talk about the lost cultures in Hong Kong and some of the things that has been disappearing over the years, especially after the turnover of China. And I guess like after I started it, I realized a lot of the problems of, for example, connecting the different touch points. Like obviously, it's an XR museum, meaning like I have AR objects and XR and VR components. Right now, I'm hosting like VR rooms on Spatial, and then AR experiences on Spark AR and sometimes Snapchat. So it's a lot of work. So I guess my question to the Holocaust Museum is how big is your team? Like how do you work out manpower? Because you can it's a lot of work between like fundraising, marketing, getting people to use it, and then monetize it, and then continue to create content and and research. It's a lot of work. So I'm just wondering, like a museum at your scale, how big is your team?
So our team, and Michael, I don't know if you can speak to like how it is at Shed and whatever, because I mean, it's going to be a different set of, we're generating our own content, right? So it's not like we're hosting content. And I think that's primarily what you guys do, or I don't know, do you guys generate, or some of that stuff generated out of the museum?
Put in some content, yeah.
So, both Shed and Field are like kind of massive, right? They've got so much infrastructure. We have, a fairly small development team, small marketing team. There are 3 people in marketing. There are about 6 to 7 in development, and we're a team of 3 in the curatorial, side of things. So the education department has a little bit more robust thing because I mean there's a huge outreach to school groups. Holocaust education is actually one of the required education things in Illinois. So I mean we have bazillions of school kids all the time, although that's only just starting to reoccur. So it's a little different also in the sense that these are movies, right? So they don't get updated necessarily. We update a whole new movie. So it doesn't require a lot of infrastructure on that side of it. So there's one guy that's sort of the dedicated sort of immersive experience IT guy, and there's an IT team of 3 people. So everybody else takes care of all the other stuff. So there's, it's not like, I don't know if it's just you, and then that is a lot of work. I mean, that's a ton of work. Yeah. So right. So if you add up all that, I mean, it's, probably a team of about 15 people that are like, actually actively making it a reality, not including obviously the people doing the footage and filming and all that.
And Matt, we have a question on Verbella's side. If I could ask Stephen if you would like to come up to the stage, and if you don't know how to do that, oh, great, excellent, come on up. Stephen has a question.
Yeah. First off, thanks for all the great presentations. This was, quite a wonderful evening. And one thought had just occurred to me as we begin to create a lot more digital content, about physical structures that are in museums. Say for instance, you normally have to go to, a museum in order to see the Statue of David. But now as people are beginning to digitize it, you can kind of see that on your own. So is there any thought being given to the fact that, some of the museums might actually start to merge in some way, shape, or fashion, in order that, you don't have to, constantly go to lots of different places, if you're interested in statuary. There could be sort of like a common exhibit that is across museums, that allows you to do the AR or the VR representation of those.
That's a really interesting idea, Stephen. I'd love to hear what our panelists think about that. It's an interesting question.
I'm actually going to ask Wilson to get his take on this one first, because I think I know what it's going to be, but I don't want to presume.
Sure. Wilson?
Thanks for putting me on the spot. Yeah, I think I hinted at it, and you know, the possibility. I think that by the very nature of what we're doing, the boundaries between museums are meaningless. I think the old kind of way of running a museum that's about a single subject, kind of a single topic or a single collection, if you will. I think it is, you know, we can see where that's will start to dissolve and kind of coalesce a little bit. So just speaking, you know, the previous person that had a question about Hong Kong, you know, I can immediately see why, you know, why isn't there a single museum that's online that's dedicated to, you know, Chinese culture spanning both, you know, Hong Kong mainland as well as maybe the diaspora in America and Canada. So and who runs this museum? Who pays for it? And who goes there? And the answer is everybody can go there, and it's paid by for anybody who cares about sustaining, you know, Chinese culture in the past and the future. So I think that's the way we have to think about things. Where and that's what we've seen is that as we talk to clients, they're still very much stuck in the brick and mortar world, if you will. So you know, just like retail kind of went from brick and mortar, and then Amazon came along. This really decimated the brick and mortar retail, the high street. I think in the same way, museums fundamentally will have to address this issue. And so the core mission of museums as storytellers, as keepers of stories, you know, what Tom had been doing with the Holocaust Museum, for example. But then, you know, really rethink about the geographical, the funding model, and the access model. I think that's all, you know, up for debate.
I love that answer, Wilson. I'm just going to pop in here really quickly to say that I worked in fundraising for 11 years, my first part of my career, and 4 of them was working for a museum that was a state-run museum. And we had, it was the Museum of New Mexico. They had 4 museums and monuments, and then we actually added the Georgia O'Keeffe Museum during that time. And I think if you think about it, like what you just said, you take that and you zoom out. You say, okay, well, it's not a state, it's a country, right? Or it's a topic. But it really does boil down to how do you create the support system and the mechanism, whether it's fundraising, infrastructure, stakeholders. And I think so much of that, we still have to help do that at the same time that we're building out these technologies, because we can't scale this unless we have that. But
And I think you also,
clearly, yeah,
I think,
so
I think,
fascinating.
I think we also have to help them think about new business models. So, you know, when we did some of the
Completely.
exhibits where the funding, you know, typically comes from a kind of local, whether that's public or private, and it's to serve a local audience. But once you get the funding and you suggest to them that the exhibit you build can reach a global audience that maybe you can monetize, that's a whole different ballgame. That's not a money sink, that's a money maker. So really, I mean, we, you know, as a company, we find ourselves really in the middle of a lot of discussions that completely change and flip the table around how museums operate and their business model. And I think the time is really ripe for that, because coming out of COVID, there's definitely a need for that. And for the museums that survived, I think a lot of them, the ones that have legs and have deeper pockets and have longevity, they're smart enough to know that you know, there's a lot of new opportunities opening up in the future as well.
And I'm before we turn
Excuse me, I'm
back-
sorry, guys.
Yeah.
You guys are starting to echo and talk over each other. Please stay muted unless you're called upon. Thank you.
Sure.
Go ahead,
And
Caroline.
I'll just say one last thing on that, and I want to maybe put a pin in it for next 2023, but that idea of new business models is something I'm spending a lot of time in exploring. How can the decentralized autonomous organization, the DAO, and we're still early, and for those that don't know about it, it's leveraging blockchain in order to operationalize governance, but it is based on the concept of people who care about a mission, who can build anything from social structures to capital. So I think this is a very good topic that might be worth exploring for next year, but I'll turn it back over to you all, Matt. So thank you.
Yeah, and we do have some more questions in the room, so I'm going to ask everybody, please limit your comments to 60 seconds at this point, just because we have a couple of different questions. I want to make sure we get to them. So I know we had a couple more answers. Yes, no?
Oh, I was just going to add that there are joining institutions, together to do some of the stuff. I know that we've partnered with other Holocaust museums to kind of bring the content to, like Dallas Holocaust Museum has our Dimensions and Testimony survivors. So there is sort of a little bit of a shared knowledge going on within certain kinds of institutions. Obviously, a Holocaust museum in any state is going to be about the Holocaust, and so a state, run museum. It's an interesting conversation, definitely. But I think there is something there. I think there's definitely something there.
Do you want to add anything?
Nothing too much besides, that's a marketer's nightmare is combining institutions. But for the world that we do go into is having a virtual, I want to say museum campus. It's to where someone in across the world can easily, if they can't travel out to Chicago to see, the institutions, they could do it virtually and walking through those institutions as if they're actually there. Hopefully that is in the future at some point and seeing where that takes us.
I know we have a question in the back of the room. I'm gonna throw one last comment on this statement, which is the other thing. When it comes to the concept of combining museums, one of the coolest experiences I've ever had in my life was going to what we think of in the United States as World War II. I'm trying to remember what they call it in Japan, but going to the museum for that war in Japan, because they have a very different perspective on how everything evolved with that. And so, it's a really neat experience to get, I will just say, the polar opposite learning of what you thought you knew from a different culture's perspective. We have a question in the back of the room.
Yeah, hi. This is for Michael from your presentation. One of the things that you mentioned in sort of your responsibilities as a manager is delivering training at a moment's notice. And I guess I was curious just to get a little bit more detail on that, whether it's the type of content that gets delivered in that situation, who it gets delivered to, why it's being delivered at a moment's notice. Anything you could kind of expound on there would be interesting.
Yeah, so different things come up with exhibit content, something maybe wrong in exhibit, or we might have to correct something. So we may be asked to, cover a signage or, letting people know that something may be incorrect, and we have the correct information to tell them verbally. During COVID, of course, a moment's notice of on the floor training was always the changing of guidelines. With the guideline changing, we have to let them know it may be this one day, the next day it's not, and then actually the next day we're going back to this. So a lot of that, and again, it's just if there is new information that we find out, especially as it relates to exhibit contents, and if we have a staff member that's either selling or staffing the exhibition, we want to make sure they have that specific information to give out to the visitors, especially as it's ever evolving, because we may be posting something on social media and it doesn't get updated in an exhibit right away compared to like a social media post, and they're going to see it. So we got to make sure we have that information too.
Hi, my name's Catherine. I am the CEO of a Web3 agency, and I think just to expound upon the connecting organizations and such, what we've been working on for various clients and mostly musical organizations and artists and such are NFT, essentially like fan clubs and such, and VIP experiences that link various organizations together. Oh, no. Well, yeah, the question is in regard to the linking of the various organizations and such. So I guess maybe it's not a question, but more so I would love to see some type of a organization, and I'm seeing it in the music industry more often than not, to connect them? I know you said it's a marketer's nightmare, but what's to be said, like some type of a fast pass or something like they have in various cities and such? So.
Yeah, it's okay. Well, then actually, museums in the park is a little bit like that, right? I mean, so museums in the park is like most of the downtown museums. I mean, I guess we're a part of that too. I don't know. Maybe that maybe that organization could actually grow and get more involved with, getting some kind of cross pollination going on.
So I have a couple rapid fire questions, which I think we'll probably go through these and then we'll end. We'll give everyone a chance to say something at the end here. So, but this is going to go for all three of you. So I'm going to kind of call you all in order. First question, just in your own experience, what would you say is like the age bracket that is most eager to try the XR experience? I'm going to go with Michael first.
To try the XR experience, the age bracket, I would say it's always going to be.
I didn't think this was a rapid fire question.
Yeah, because it really does range. It really does range, and it really depends on your visitor dynamic. But it always ranges. You might think it's the children, but it's always the early adult years. That are more excited to try some things out.
Wilson, come on, give me something here. You got the demographics. I know you're tracking.
Definitely under 30, and but I think over 60 as well. I think senior citizens, being able to feel like that they're going somewhere in VR is definitely a pain point that VR solves.
Good.
Yeah, I would actually agree with what Wilson said. Primarily, I would say 20 and 30s are very interested in coming to the museum to see these things. But I think that anyone over 50 is highly engaged at this point. I mean, a lot of, that demographic has kids and everything. That's, yeah.
So the second question was going to be who takes the most away from it? The people that you wouldn't necessarily expect to be involved, who get the most out of it.
I answered already. Senior
citizens.
I
think you both kind of answered that. Okay, so what we're going to do now, we're going to give everybody about 2 minutes to just sort of any last statements that they want to share. And I'm going to go through all the presenters and then Caroline, myself real quick. So I'm looking for someone to indicate they want to go first, or I'm just going to call on you, John. You're looking at me. Go.
I think it's, the VR. I mean, I guess it's funny because XR is not a term that I actually was totally aware of before coming here, so which is weird, I guess. But I guess the XR experience at the museum it's an amazing way to gain an insight into these stories, and I highly recommend coming and checking it all out. Especially the new ones that are going to be coming in sometime early next year. And thank you for having me.
Yeah, I can go real quick. It's VRs are coming rapidly. There's a lot more museums that are creating virtual reality wings. Yeah, I know there's one in Denver for sure. At their museum that they're creating virtual reality wings. So they're adding a lot more to it, and now trying to see how XR plays into it will be interesting in the next few years.
Wilson, go ahead.
Yeah, I think XR is inevitable, and it feels like we've been, those of us been in this industry, it feels like forever already, but it's really just the first inning. I think it's also inevitable that amazing experiences will be in the home. That's generally the roadmap for most new technology like this. So I would just end there, and the possibility is endless. Design is everything, and thank you very much for having me here, and being able to present with such an engaging group of co-presenters.
Thank you, Wilson. Caroline, I think Sarah wanted to say something before you finish up.
Yes, Sarah, did you want to say something?
Thank you to everyone, and that in Virbela Open Campus, we welcome and try to support any artists or museum exhibitions of any kind. We do have an art center, and I am looking to have rotating exhibitions there. So to the members' kind of comments earlier about being a one woman or one man show, one woman show, I know all about it, but here to support and to help give you a space to sandbox and try some things. And so we're here for all of you, and thank you so much for the work that you all do it's important. It moves us forward together as humanity. So thank you.
That's great. Thank you. Wilson.
I said my piece already, but please feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn. Okay.
Yeah,
Sorry,
so one
your-
of the things,
your
I'll
question
get to
was
this in
up.
the closing remarks with connections, and actually, Caroline, if you hold for 1 second, Sarah, I'll just say you need to talk Tom into walking you through the virtual office for VRAR Chicago, because he has Chicago artists hanging all over the walls in our virtual office.
Bring him out in the open so everyone can see him. I will do just that. Thank you so much.
We also have somebody in our audience on this side, Trisha Giannakis, who has an exhibit up here in Verbella that everybody should check out as well.
Awesome. Caroline, you want to close up with your closing remarks?
Sure. I'll just say that I do think that the things that I think the most about are that being able to, the design, but also the trying of, as somebody pointed out, is the more that we can focus on the entry point of what this looks like, to me, is going to be the better win in the long haul. And there are so many people who are just watching as our headsets are changing and what's coming and the late adopters. But I do think that I'm sorry, was it Michael who was talking about the storytelling? Just the storytelling is it's remarkable. It's a beautiful thing. So I'm really excited about what's to come and just blending together all of these industries together in really interesting ways. So thank you.
All right. So before I actually, I do have one statement I want to make about just kind of the museum and the experience. And then I'll get to a couple more statements. But the one thing I'll say, obviously, a lot of the stuff we talked about today spoke very specifically to the visitor, the museum visitor experience. And the one thing that Michael touched on a little bit here was the fact that that's not the only thing. You can train people using VR who are going to work at the museums. You can do research on some of the topics that are going to be studied and have storytelling done about them using VR and AR. I know Bundle AR, we've done training for employee training type stuff. The other thing I'll say too is that there's an the DeSalvo Museum of African American History has the Chicago's first fully augmented exhibit, where the whole, there's a lot of stuff in the exhibit, but you want all the stories, you have to watch it in augmented reality. Otherwise, you're pretty much walking around looking at stuff and there's no story there. So there's things like that can be done, which are really kind of cool ways to do stuff. But with that, before I get to kind of closing statements and just wrapping up the night, because we're not done, there's going to be networking going on in Verbella. I am going to mute them in the room so we don't have to worry about a whole lot of cross chatter. But the biggest thing we have to do here is I have to thank everybody who organizes this. So Caroline, absolutely, for organizing everything in the virtual space, and Sarah for helping with Verbella. Tom, who is everything, frankly. He books the speakers. He does all the media ahead of time. He is currently doing the live cast and everything else. Ron, who's doing the check-in today. Ben, working the microphone. Matt, always with VRAR Chicago, helping out. And as the last thing I'll say in relation to the show is, as John mentioned, VRAR Chicago is actually currently working with the Holocaust Museum to help them figure out how to take what they have as an internal experience virtually in the museum and actually share it out to other locations. That's some of the stuff that VRAR Chicago does. They can help. If you're trying to figure out how to use this tech, if you have a problem, you have a question, you're trying to figure out, I just want to know how I would do this, Matt can connect you with the people to talk to. That's what VRAR Chicago does. That's aside from throwing events and doing virtual hosting and stuff like that, a lot of consulting work. With that, next month, so we do this every month, as we said, this is a free event. It will always be a free event. We will do it every month. It is always on the first Wednesday of the month, unless that happens to be a holiday. I'm trying to find my mouse here so I can go to the next slide. The next couple of topics that we have, January 4th, we will be covering training. Training always ends up being a very popular topic because, frankly, when it comes to industrial use of immersive technology, training is pretty much the starting point where everybody goes. Whether it's industrial training or augmented employee training, you name it, there's all sorts of stuff there. February 1st, we're attempting to do a brand new topic that we've not done before, which is military. I personally just returned from IITSEC, which is Inter-Service Interdisciplinary Training Simulation Education Conference. 20,000 people who all work with immersive technology and training of the military across all branches and literally every function you can think of, and probably 50 that you can't. there's a lot there. I'm working with some of the contacts that I made there and some of the people I know who are experts in the field to talk on that. Bundle AR will actually present on that topic because we do support the military. March 1st is a new topic that we're going to try. So we're not 100%. This is not 100% confirmed yet. We're still working on some speakers, although I've got some interest. And let's just face it, over the years, there have been some XR failures. Google Glass as a consumer item, things like that. And what we're going to do is I like to call things a failure that are actually, it's not a failure, there's something you learned. And so we're going to focus on the topic of what are some things that we've learned from what some people might have publicly looked at initially as a failure. And again, I brought up Google Glass for a reason. A lot of people think that was a massive failure. That technology still exists. It's actually still in very wide use, just in manufacturing, not as a consumer technology. So things like that. These are the topics we're going to do. Please like us on social, follow us on social, spread the word out about this. A couple years, like before the pandemic, when we went into the pandemic, this event would generally draw approximately 100 people a month. And I think one of the biggest things that we're dealing with post-pandemic is that a lot of people just kind of forgot that this stuff happens. We do cast it. We do have, obviously, the live virtual space along with us. But we would like to just get the word out a little bit more and let people know that this stuff is happening. So yeah, those are all of our socials. It's pretty much VR AR Chicago everywhere. The presentations will be posted on our website. The video will be live on aud.live and linked from our website. Everybody who has been presented or is associated with this, you can find their LinkedIn, you can find their social. Please connect with us. We are happy to answer any questions you have. We're happy to connect you with people. A lot of us have very vast networks of people who are working in the space. And with that, I will just say thank you very much. I'm going to throw the Verbella people up on the screen one more time, I think. There we go. I probably shouldn't be switching screens like that. I probably should just be using my little switcher. But so be it. Thanks, everybody. We have drinks, we have snacks. We're going to be here to answer any questions. I don't think we actually get kicked out of here until 8:30, so plenty of time. And the 1871 party, I believe, is still going on too, so if people want to sneak over there, and I'm guessing they got some food and drinks also. Thank you very much. Thanks, everybody in Verbella.
Thank you.
Oh, there's Caroline. Thanks, Caroline. I'm going to mute you in the room here, so thank you very much.
Hey, everybody. That was great.
I have one that's like power locked and I can't turn it off.